咱们每个人的身体细胞里都有23对染色体，里面由32对碱基对构成的 DNA 写着咱们全部的生命密码。人类第一个率领科学家们破解全部生命密码的，就是这位 Craig Venter 博士。假如这还不够牛，这位杰出的科学家在拆开读通人类染色体以后，又重新人工合成了一整条染色体，并把它成功植入了一个细菌细胞，创造了一种全新的生命。他创立了 Human Longevity Inc. 人类长寿公司，致力于挑战人类寿命的极限，服务于一些全球顶级的客户。生命的密码来自哪里？科学的边界又在哪儿？我在 Venter 博士的加州办公室采访了他。So I heard that you recently signed off your new book, and it's about collecting microbiome in the ocean.
Every milliliter of seawater, there's 1 million bacteria and 10 million viruses. So we discovered more new species than there are stars in the universe. So that's the ocean microbiome, and it provides 50% of our oxygen that we breathe, and we're slowly killing it off, which means we're going to suffocate ourselves if we don't change.
At this point, would you say, what's the thing that really most interests you? Pushing the end of life one step further, like what human longevity set out to do, or the diversity in the ocean?
Well, at a personal level, I'm trying to push off the end of life as far as possible, at least at a high quality level. But science is part of a continuum. We're trying to understand life at the most basic level. That's why we synthesize the first synthetic life form. That's why I sequenced the human genome. That's why I sequenced the first bacterial genome in history, and why we sequenced the hundreds of millions of organisms in the ocean.
So if we're looking at, say, a 30-year horizon, 30 years from today, what's the limit to human longevity?
Well, it depends what we do to the environment. If we keep going the way we're going, and some of the projected sea level rise and creating more dead zones in the ocean that provide, that used to provide our oxygen, human longevity could get shorter and shorter. So right now, longevity in Russia is almost what it was in the 1950s and 1960s. People are working hard to go to the moon and Mars as a way to escape Earth, but that doesn't solve the problem. But if we just base it on curing diseases, we're affecting things at the individual level. Not enough people are using our new approaches to affect the population level longevity. But certainly individuals should live well into their hundreds if they, have good genes and practice the preventative methods that we've been developing in human longevity.
When I was talking to Wei Wu in Beijing, I asked him the same question, and he gave a quote of 150. And really, the idea is that if you did everything right in terms of so-called car maintenance sort of type of technology, right, doing the right radiology and genetic testing and all that, then you should be able to live beyond 100. And anything after that, maybe organ transplant. I heard that you were the mastermind behind the transgenic pig heart transplantation. So are we really looking at about 150, say, 20 years from now?
The islands of longevity in the world, where there's 5 or 6 of them, where the populations, more often than not reach 100. It's not impossible, but, we're fighting, as I said, we're fighting changes in the environment that are taking us a different direction. We're fighting wars, we're fighting new pandemics, such as the one that we just all lived through. So you have to count all those things in. Somebody can do everything right and get exposed to COVID and die from it.
Now that we're on the subject, some of the northeastern Asian regions have some of the longest lifespans, Hong Kong, Japan, Singapore, to name a few. What do you think is the most contributing factor, genetics, lifestyle, or environment?
Well, good genetics helps you get through all these other situations, so that's the best start to have. and then having a healthy environment. And healthy environment is not just a not toxic one, but intellectually rich. You know, the number one thing that causes early demise is people stop being physically active, and they get immobilized, they can't get out of a chair, and that leads to rapid demise. So doing what you're doing of running 5 miles a day, you don't have to do something that extreme, but strength and muscle strength is a very key aspect of longevity.
As you are the first person who cracked the human genome, it's all ACNTG. And I mean, do you truly believe in your heart that it came from evolution, or is there some kind of a super coder who just wrote the whole thing and we're still trying to decipher it?
So science is not a belief system. Okay, science is a fact-based system, in contrast to religion and conspiracy theories and everything else that are belief-based systems. So all the facts, from everything from DNA sequencing to going back to Darwin with his observations that he made on isolated animal groups, evolution is not a theory. It is a scientific proven fact.
And you said it very succinctly that science is about facts. The problem is, facts are not always complete. You can say something that is completely truthful, but it may not represent the whole picture. And there are so many people in this country and in science who are either presented with or discovered themselves partial truths, partial facts, and they form their views on either science or the world on partial facts. And that's why we have disagreements, right?
Well, I'm not sure there's partial facts. There's things...
And there's certainly plenty of scientists who don't agree with each other, right?
Science is a self-correcting system. That's what my book's about. What people believed about the diversity of life on this planet at the start of the century is very different than what we found. And so new discovery corrects the faulty thinking from the past. With the human genome, scientists are not infallible. They come up with some pretty stupid ideas.
You said it, I didn't say it.
And for example, they're based out of ignorance. So when we were first sequencing the human genome, only about 2 to 3% of the genetic code codes for proteins. So some of the top scientists in the world said the rest must be junk DNA. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's such a stupid idea, that it has no value. But over the last 2 decades, we've shown that all that DNA is very important. So there's lots of bad hypotheses and bad ideas based on ignorance. They just had no idea what it was. Mm-hmm. But before we sequenced the human genome, many scientists thought there were going to be hundreds of thousands of human genes. One gene for every trait, every function, everything we know about humans, there would be a controlling gene for it.
Well, they must have
turned
not
out
learned
to
about
be,
combination.
They couldn't be further from reality. There's some plants that have more genes than you and I have together. Mm-hmm. But by scientific experiment, those faulty ideas get corrected. So yes, there's some disagreements based on theory, but they get replaced with fact once the facts are established. Mm-hmm. Belief systems like religions never are self-correcting. Mm-hmm.
Well, they don't fight it about who's the center of the universe anymore.
Yeah. Well, and when we made the first synthetic cell in 2010, I got comments the same day from the President of the United States and from the Pope.
Wow.
And,
there you go.
But, instead of Galileo's day, I would have been invited to a barbecue. The Pope said Dr. Venter did not create life. He just changed one of life's motors. So I guess that's progressive thinking versus wanting to kill me because I was proposing something new and different. religions do change and adapt to society needs, but there's still a belief system that, in my view, has probably done more harm than good to the world's societies than benefit.
Well, it's so wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much. I've really benefited from your
Well, I've
wisdom.
enjoyed our conversation.
确实，人类的追求又岂止在延长寿命？好奇心和思想让我们不断地远航星辰大海。我是小薇博士，关注我，我们和您分享全球健康科技的新成果、新理念。